Welcome to the Financial Planners South Africa podcast, a show dedicated to driving the positive evolution of financial advice, specifically in South Africa. To join a global community of financial advisors, sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice, head to xyadvisor.com. Portfolio Metrics is thrilled to bring you this podcast in support of our common passion, people, and the evolution of wealth management. Our global business links precision investment management to expert financial advice through partnerships and technology. Portfolio Metrics is an authorized financial services provider. AssetMap is a proud sponsor of this podcast. Are you looking for the next big thing in advisor technology? AssetMap is used by thousands of financial advisors to help create more meaningful conversations with clients. See for yourself how AssetMap is leading the next phase of financial advice delivery. Learn more at asset-map.com/Louis for special listeners discount. This episode is proudly brought to you by Alan Gray. They say it's important to live for today. Although that might be true, we can't forget to plan for tomorrow. There's a lot of it left, after all. Alan Gray is an authorized financial services provider. Visit www.alangray.co.za to learn how we build long-term wealth for clients. Welcome to another episode of Financial Planners South Africa. Today I have with me in the studio Ben Charlton. Ben is a certified financial planner and loves lifestyle financial planning. We are going to have a wonderful chat about all things technology, niches, what people should be doing. Ben, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Before our call, we were just discussing setups and getting ready for a virtual first world. And Ben, you mentioned that most of your client interactions are now kind of starting with virtual and stays virtual. Was that always the default for you?
Sure. That's an interesting question. I think, I mean, I always love face-to-face. You know, it's always great meeting with somebody, shaking their hand. But I just think as progressed and things, there was a lot of people that are working sort of maybe after hours at different times. And so it kind of evolved a little bit into a bit of a necessity. So I can help a lot of more people, you know, not in a 9-to-5 environment, for example, and I think it was kind of grown from there. And now it's just amazing that you can be sitting in Durban and helping someone in Joburg, or, you know, I could go to Thailand for a week and still be helping somebody in Joburg or whatever the case is.
Yeah, your location independence makes a massive difference. We have people dialing in from all over the world and you don't even know it. Ben, you have a very interesting niche and you deal predominantly with doctors. I know you have a special story around this. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. So it was kind of during the COVID, as COVID set in, you know, I was trying to think there must be a way of doing financial planning and doing things differently. And, you know, a lot of people talked about having a niche, you know, all those marketing experts say have a niche market. So I did think for a while, I was like, well, what niche can I do? What would I be good at? The obvious one would have been doctors, because my dad's a doctor, my sister's a doctor, my wife's a doctor. But I actually ran in the opposite direction, because I know how much doctors are harassed by like financial advisors and people trying to sell them things. And so they hate financial advisors, you know. So if I go to a bar with my wife and people ask, what do you do? You know, I'd just say I'm a car salesman or something, because it's worse than getting, it's worse than saying I'm a financial advisor. But that kind of changed a little bit over time, because I had such unique insights into what happens in the life of a doctor, you know, and those are so crucial things that you can actually then help people, you know, to forward plan. You know, you're not doing reactive planning, because you know what's coming up in their lives. I mean, I had one client, so they're coming to the end of internship, and I said, you know, you're going to be 27 next year, going into community service. You might not actually get a post. Then what happens? You know, they were finishing ComServe and they were going in to get a medical officer post. And I said, up until now, 3 years of working is all being guaranteed. So what happens if you don't get a post? And they're like, wow, I never even thought about that, So we were able to plan, for 2 or 3 months worth of expenses as a backup in case you didn't have a job, in January. We knew you should probably get something along the way, but what if, 1st of Jan, she was unemployed? So I think that's the amazing things you can do in clients' live when you niche into a market, because you know their progression, their lives, sometimes even a little bit better than them.
That makes complete sense. I mean, for someone to reach out to a specialist dealing with, the person that might be going through the same life stage, have similar challenges. Are there things that you see are very unique, specifically dealing with doctors, that you probably won't see in other occupations?
Well, I mean, I think the common thing that would be similar to other occupations is obviously like the GPF, and that's also has its own little thing to understand, and it could also be completely foreign to other people. So I think that's understanding that is actually quite important. But I've also noticed, especially doctors when they're getting older, because I think being a doctor is a bit of a calling. It's who they are. So they don't actually. If you talk to them about retirement, it's almost like a foreign concept. There was a ENT in Durban the other day. I think he retired a month or two ago, and he was 92. So like they don't think about retirement. And so what are we doing there? But maybe you're going to help them to step down or to think about things in different ways. And so I think those things are maybe slightly different. Whereas in other occupations, it's very, at 65, the company beats you out. But also, I think with a lot of my female clients, it's very interesting because they obviously earn they earn well, especially in government. And if you don't marry a doctor, it's actually a very big shift in earning between husband and wife. And then how do you navigate that as a couple? I mean, so those have been some amazing conversations that I've had with clients, because I've been through it myself. My wife earns well, and I've gone through all the struggles as a guy, thinking like, how do you navigate this? How do you lead a family and these kind of things? And so I've been able to then bring that as well into my experience with clients, because I've lived it, and I think that's also quite unique in a doctor world, if that makes sense.
Well, Ben, there's so much I want to unpack. Can we start with the overconfidence bias? And it's something that we see when we deal, I'm thinking specifically with engineers and someone that's very successful in their field. They tend to say, well, if I'm successful in my occupation, I'll be successful in investing, I'll be successful in, financial planning and in other areas of my life. How do you tackle that?
I think a lot changes with age and a bit of experience. I find with a lot of the younger doctors, they know everything before they even started work. They get approached, I think, by a lot of the the banks and the other people in their last year of varsity, and they're giving them iPads, giving them this. They treat them like royalty. So they're almost like walking on air when they come out of varsity. Some of them have bought a car before they've even got their first paycheck. That's how much they're given. So they've got this, like you say, massive overconfidence. But as I get older, I think, debit orders start hitting and life sort of happens. And I know numerous stories of people who are driving these, German cars and maybe got a puncture or two, and it just sits in there at the doctor's quarters till the end of the month until they got some money to be able to replace the tire, for example, So I think those things kind of humble you a little bit. And as they get older, they sort of realize what's happening. They realize that their money isn't never ending as they thought it would be. So I think it has become quite a humbling experience. But it just does take a bit of time.
I can see how it's valuable seeing things that can go wrong and almost using that as analogies and stories to say, hey, this might not be you, but here's something to think about. What do you see shift when someone actually sees, oh, okay, hold on, Ben has some experience in this? Like, what changes in the client and in that relationship for you?
I think it's massive. There's some people who think you just kind of maybe, I wouldn't say giving them a lecture, but, they're sort of like, yeah, okay, because they want to almost like live the life that they've always thought about, that Instagram life. But when they get it, oh, I mean, like everything sort of changes. And it's such an amazing thing because, I've had clients that are dealing with her, and then she got married. Now she brings her husband in, and now they're sort of like, now we got to do finances together. How do we do finances together? What should we be doing? And then you're having great discussions with them. Not that I'm the hero, but I feel like to be like a guide and throw the question straight back at them and say, well, how do you think money should be done? How do you want to do it as your family? And they start to unpack it. I mean, the conversations that you start having with people now around money, they're not so scared to talk about it. It's more open. And then when things pop up, the first thing they do is they get a WhatsApp. Hey, Ben, this has happened. What should I be doing here? And they'll say, hey, let's discuss it. Let's go through this. Say, hey, Ben, if I do this, how will this influence our plan to, go overseas next year? Or how will this influence us paying for our deposit for our house? We're having such amazing conversations, enriching conversations. So yeah, the shift is just, it's not about a product or where to invest or what to invest in. It's just about them and their life, and that's just amazing.
It sounds like the conversation channels between you and your clients are wide open and that they feel comfortable reaching out to you. Tell us a little bit more about how your clients or prospective clients communicate with you.
Sure. Yeah, I think doctors they do work at weird hours, so I think you've also got to be available, and they're not going to sit down and read an email. If you come up and put an amazing plan together, it could be perfect, but they're not going to sit and read it. They just don't have the time, to do it. And so I think, just being open. I mean, like obviously WhatsApp is very easy. Voice notes. I mean, so many plans have been accomplished over voice notes. I mean, and discussions and things like that. So that, and then obviously meetings on one-to-one or virtually, sitting down and actually booking time. And even in that, having most of those kind of meetings would be, say, afternoon to evening time, because that's when they're free. That's when they're available. They can't just suddenly stop, at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's like, oh, I've got a patient on the table. Oh, hang on a minute. I need to go speak about to my financial advisor. Like they've got stuff that they're doing, literally life-saving work. And so I think being available in the evening for those kind of things also makes a big difference, because they need to sit down and talk about their finances. They're so busy. They don't actually have time to do anything. So, and you're also kind of forcing them in a way to sit down and think about it, which is great for them as well, because otherwise it'll be like, I'll do it next week, and that next week becomes next year, which becomes sort of never. I just see it with my wife, even with things like HPCSA, you got to register for this, you got to register for this course, and just trying to keep track of everything. It's so difficult. I mean, the last thing you want to do is sit down with somebody to talk about, your finances. So being available in so many different ways, I think makes a massive difference, for them to get hold of you.
So have you had to change the structure of your work day to cater for this? Because you're mentioning kind of meetings in the hours, and that makes me think of, almost the old days where we would meet someone at their house and, you'd sit down and you'd discuss what policy would suit for them. The industry in large, I think, has leaned away from that, but you're leaning in. You're saying, hey, let's make it easier for the client. What does your normal work day when meeting with clients look like?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've tried to structure my day slightly later, if that makes sense. So I've got morning time to be at home. So I can make the coffee in the morning, get the wife off to work, and she's happy. And I'll start my day a little bit later. So maybe around 10 and doing my admin. There might be one or two meetings that I'm attending, might be industry things or and things like that. But client meetings are predominantly then in the evening. So it's fine, because I've then shifted my day to look like that. And so for me, even if I'm meeting at 8, 9 o'clock at night, it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me, if that makes sense. So yeah, so it's a little bit of a shift, but I was never a morning person to begin with, so it works.
Yeah, you have the control. You can move this, you can move time zones, you can work from a different location.
Exactly, exactly.
You spoke about the money conversations are getting easier. I often think that money is a very difficult thing to talk about. It's almost easier to talk about sex than what it is to talk about money. And it's still for a lot of people it's taboo, but it sounds like your client base is opening up to these money conversations. Tell us a little bit more about, how that's different from maybe some of the older clients or older generations that you're serving.
I think this new generation or the younger generation that they're eager to learn and they want to understand. They it's not that they're lazy. I think they're eager, but they just don't know where. And if we learned maybe a lot of things maybe from our parents or maybe we saw things from our grandparents. But I think a lot of the people now and a lot of the demographics that we're dealing with, maybe they're the first educated in their family. So who have they looked up to, to learn about these financial decisions or how things work? And so I think that's exciting because then you can help people, from the beginning. They're asking you, even if it's from simple things to like, what is a balloon payment? How does that work? Or is it better to do structure it this way or structure that way? And talking through those things. And that will help as well then to build up to the bigger things, saying, what does your future retirement look like? What are you trying to do with your life? Where do you want to go? What holidays are we going on? And I think also just being genuinely interested in people makes a massive difference. Because, it's all very well to say, yeah, I want to go on holiday next year. And that's your goal. So, okay, well, where are you going? And it's like, oh, well, actually, I really always wanted to go to Zanzibar or something. Okay, cool. So how much do you think that's going to cost? How long are you going to go for? What are the flights going to be? What are you going to do when you get there? And so they start then thinking about it. They start believing it. They start seeing it. And then you can say, cool, well, let's start working towards that plan. Let's start working so that in 2 years' time, you can be going to Zanzibar. And so I think, a combination of all of those things, just people are genuinely interested and they want to do the right thing. They want to, I don't say like a fire movement, but that kind of, I guess those things play a part. But I think it's just a lot more, people are just a lot more aware, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're speaking their language and you're getting them excited about the things that they want to achieve. Someone said recently that when you're working with someone planning their retirement goals, that you should be asking, what does a Tuesday morning look like? You want a very clear picture. And it sounds like you incorporate something similar in your goal conversations. For financial planners that want to get in this type of goal conversation, what advice would you give them to maybe make it run a little bit smoother?
So it's a good question because it's something that we we think about and we refine and we try to go over our processes, so often. So it's a very difficult question to answer. But I think it's trying to get to the core of what they're really looking for, if that makes sense. And that's not always an easy thing to do. But you got to try and take off all those layers of the onions and get to that real point of what's at the heart of it. Because I think a lot of, like with the doctors, a lot of them that I deal with, they say that they want to open their own sort of maybe clinic or some say their own hospital. They want to give back to the community because that's a very core of what they're doing. And at the face of it, I'm like, that's impossible. Okay, that's a dream. Okay, what next? What car do you want? Like that can be very easy to look at that. But what is the core of what they're trying to say there? And as you ask a bit deeper questions, it's like they actually want to have an impact in what they're doing. They want communities to be affected, to have healthcare, access to healthcare. They want to see communities being uplifted. And I think that's, you got to ask a lot of questions to get to that, which is, it takes a bit of practice. But yeah, I think when you unlock that and at the heart of what they want, it opens up so much for you to talk to them about and for them to share.
Yeah, that image of peeling the layers of the onion is wonderful. Bill Bacharach talks about a question that he often asks is, what's important about money to you? And then someone would answer and then delving a little bit deeper in why is that important? And, why is that? And so kind of not stopping and going deeper and deeper and deeper. When do you know when it's time to stop?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I was just thinking to myself the other day, I was like, geez, I don't think I quite get deep enough. I get stuck on layer 3. I feel like I've got 2 more layers to go to. And so, as Carl Richards would say, he tries in every meeting to make somebody cry. Then he knows that's the end point, like he's got to the point.
If you hit a nerve.
But yeah, yeah. But I think, you can sort of, maybe sometimes even in the meeting you don't really understand. You think you got to that point, but I think when you sit back and you sort of reflect on the meeting, you can actually then pick it up as well. So I don't think you always have to get right to the bottom of the core. If you peel back 1 or 2 layers, you can sort of understand a bit more, of that person. But I mean, yeah, I think, like you said, as an example, someone can come in and just say, I just want to be financially secure. And he's sort of like, well, what does that mean to you? And I say, I just want to have enough money so that we can do the things we want. I was like, okay, well, what do you want to be able to do? And you keep asking, that actually that the wife wanted to just be able to have time with the kids. So only maybe work mornings and have the afternoons off. That's what they're really looking for. And that's what the heart of what they want. And so I think clients don't know how to phrase things, or maybe they try and say things into like a financial planning way. So, I want to be financially secure. And that could mean anything to a whole lot of different people. And so I think we got to just try and unpack it a little bit so that you understand what they are trying to relate to you. And I think then you know what it is. You've got to that final layer.
It's this almost hyper-personal question instead of just, oh, this is something that I expect you to, this is the answer you would expect me to give, and kind of a copy and paste. This planning does get very personal, and it sounds like you deal with a lot of stuff that traditional financial planners would not do. How do you create the boundaries around your relationship where someone might just be passing on more stuff than what you need to take on or what you're comfortable taking on?
I think it's very important having a structure and a plan in your process. So that, this meeting we're covering this, and this meeting we're covering that, and meeting 3 we're doing this. And so you're, in a way, setting boundaries there, so that you can keep the meeting also then on point. And also, I mean, you are asking the questions as well. They're getting direction from you. And I think you can never ask too many wrong questions, because a client will never share anything that they don't want you to know. And so if you start going also in the wrong direction, then they're not going to lead you in the wrong direction. They're going to lead you. And so I think then as well, it's important for you to know what are you trying to get to. And so also not just asking questions for the sake of asking questions. I think there's got to be purpose and a point behind the questions. Am I learning something about that person? Is this going to help to get them there? We're not just asking, oh, so how was the rugby on the weekend? Who do you support? That's all kind of surface level sort of questions. But if you know why you're asking, where the conversation's going, what we're going to achieve out of it, and it's all part of your process and it's leading to some sort of point, I think then you can be in a very safe space along that journey.
How much of that comes through experience versus training? Because I'm thinking that your discussions in your first couple of client meetings probably didn't look the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was a bit of trial and error. I think mostly we sort of just say, oh, I'm going to try this today. And sometimes clients don't come back. You're like, oops, okay, that didn't work. And then you just try and you tweak it and you try some things. But I think it's also, you develop relationship with the clients, and you can ask them for genuine feedback and say, hey, how did you find this? Or some of the clients you have a good relationship with, you say, hey, I'm going to do this with you. I want you to let me know, how does it feel? What was it like? What did you feel at the end of it? And you're just getting this constant feedback and tweaking and things, because if those are and that's another great thing about working with a niche, is because if that's your ideal client, then they're going to tell you how they feel, then they'll be able to relate how other people in their field are going to feel as well, or similar kind of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it becomes very valuable feedback to you. In the coaching world, they often talk about, asking someone, what do they expect to get out of this conversation? And then at the end of that conversation, look back to say, well, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, you said you expected this. Is that what you got? And oftentimes the answer is no, I got so much more. There's kind of bookends to the conversation.
Yeah. I think you make a good point. I mean, it's so important to understand what does the client want and what are they looking for. And that's a question that we ask. Because we might not be the right fit for what they're looking for. And B, we got to also know what they're trying to achieve. And if you're going in a different direction to where they're going, then you're going to get into problems probably sooner rather than later.
What are the red flags, Ben, that you look for in clients to say, hey, this is someone that I'm going to run in the other direction? Like, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah.
Other than a bag of cash.
Yeah. Look, I think we've got a process that we've set up and that we take every single client through. So if a client doesn't want to run through that process, then we won't take them on, because we know that it's just we're not going to get anywhere because they're not willing to go through the work. They're not willing to go through the journey. We're just going to clash heads. And so it's not worth it. So if they're not willing to go through our process, then we're not going to take them.
So Ben, when you say we had Dirk Groeneveld on as one of the early episodes at Client Care, and you recently joined the team. So can you tell us a little bit, without peeking under the hood, what that process looked like joining them, and how well or how difficult it went?
In joining them, or in how our process is that we take a client through?
In joining them, specifically that move to...
Yeah, it was very interesting one, because I accepted my job offer before I even met Dirk. I remember I signed a contract, and then we happened to be in Kruger at the same time. So I met him in Kruger, and it was very different to what I'd ever seen, because I've only met virtually. So I'd only seen the top half of him. I was like, oh, he's got legs. So it was such a strange encounter. But yeah, it was great. I think we've, I think we'd seen each other's, things online, our posts. We were kind of speaking a very similar language. And then we chatted a few times, and he even actually spoken to me a few months prior, and he's like, hey, have you thought about maybe joining us? And I kind of just laughed. I was like, haha, and carried on the conversation. And yeah, and things came to a B, and yeah, it looked like it would be a great move. And so I just did some due diligence and checked them out. But yeah, and as you know, well, I live in Durban, and they're based in PE. So again, that's also how does this work? So I work virtually from Durban, and they're in PE. So the first time I flew up and met the team, I was like, hey everybody, this is me. But it's been great. I think learning to go through their process, to see how they're doing things, and then also adding in a little bit of my flair to how things have been going, and make not that there's anything wrong, but just saying, hey, how could we improve this? How can we look at this? Let's maybe bring a bit of technology to these things. Let's look at this. Let's look at that. And I think that's been it's an amazing combination when you have sort of an old established guy as well as some young blood to really sort of get in there. And I think you can actually do so much because you've got the experience and the energy to balance everything out.
Ben, what did the conversation look like with your clients, and how did that go?
Yeah, so I just it's interesting because my relationship with my clients has always been Ben and Louis, for example. Louis is phoning Ben. It's never been Ben of XYZ financial planners. And so I just said, hey Louis, I'm just going to be doing what I'm doing, but I'm going to be doing it somewhere else. But I'm going to have a team around me. We're going to be able to do more for you. Because at Client Care, we have two advisors in every meeting. So that's for you as a client, how amazing is that? If something happens to me, if I get hit by a bus, then there's somebody else who's been in the meeting. I don't have to always die, but what if I was overseas or I was on holiday or they can't get hold of me for whatever reason? But there's a team around. not only that, but now when you're coming up with something, maybe it's a bit more tricky, or there's now 2 or 3 brains thinking about this problem or solution, as opposed to just me. And what if I was leading them in the wrong direction in the first place? Now you got somebody else. So I think from a client's perspective, it's amazing. You got so much more value to the client. But also, like I said, they were like, but it's the relationship is Mr. Client and Ben. It's not XYZ financial planners. So for them, they're like, well, as long as you keep doing the same stuff, what difference does it make? So yeah, I think it's been great. They've been meeting. We've been doing onboarding of them, and they've been meeting everybody, getting to know everyone, and having great conversations. Bringing in some of the stuff that through Dirk's experience, and having even deeper conversations. I'm like, oh, I didn't know about that about them. Like, oh, that's interesting. And so again, it's just having those conversations again can even bring up things, which is amazing. So yeah, it's been a great experience.
I want to know a little bit more about how you deliver advice as a team. So you say that there's 2 advisors in a meeting. Who gets to do what, and how do you agree on that? Because as advisors, we tend to want to give our own opinion often. So yeah, tell me a bit about how you balance that and how you manage it.
It's let's have a game of ching chong chat beforehand.
Your advice wins.
I think the first thing, it's not ever been like, it's not in the culture of client care. It's not your client or my client. It's all client care's clients. I think we have someone who maybe be the lead advisor, and that's because they had the primary relationship with that person and they can go to. But it's never like, this is Ben's client, this is Alex's client. There's never been that in any discussion. They're all client care's clients. So I think that takes about that competition out of it completely. And so the lead advisor would sort of lead the conversation. And I think when it comes, you're saying about advice, I think the thing is, but it's very tricky, because people often come to us for advice. And that's probably a main reason why maybe someone will come and see a financial advisor. But I think the client actually knows the right thing to do. And so when you're throwing it back to the client, and we're more like a guide, we're not the hero that's telling them, go this way, come in and save the day. I think we're more of a guide. And when you, like I said earlier, they said, what should we do? How do we do money as a family? I'm not telling them what to do. I didn't say, well, first of all, you need to do this, this, and this. I said, well, how do you guys want to do it? How do you think it should work? And then you play off that and you're asking those conversations. So you're not then trying to fight for the best advice, because I think everybody's situation is different. It's all unique. And so the client's in the best place to know what's going to be best for them. We can maybe help them around the technical things. And we can discuss that as advisors offline together, saying, okay, but this law says this and this could do that, the technical stuff on the back end. But yeah, when you're into the client, I think the client's in the best place to know. We just got to help them to know to get to that point where they can see what's the best way to take.
Ben, what training helped you develop this view? Because you have a very different view about how you should be delivering advice and the engagements. Is there anything that crafted or pushed you in this direction? Any resources that comes to mind?
I've it's been a mixed match of things. I think the one thing that had the most profound difference was that when COVID started, then there was Brian Foster, and he had the Financial Caddy, and I started that a year course there, and that kind of opened my eyes to lifestyle financial planning, and I think that's what's really kind of changed my view. And I was like, wow, there's a different way. I always wanted to do the right thing for the client, but I didn't know how to do it. What is the structure? And I think that course really gave me an amazing foundation. So I've got to give credit to him to sort of opening my eyes. But then it's also just been, I've also fostered a great relationship with Mark Sado in Cape Town. We've had great conversations. And so we've talked about things, we've wrestled with things, and those kind of things. But then again, podcasts, I think, is a great way. I mean, there's so many great ones. Brendan Foster's got Brendan Fraser, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really enjoy his stuff. And you've got your Carl and Kitsis. Enjoy them because Carl thinks emotionally and Kitsis is very numerical. And it's like, I don't get it. And they're almost like they're totally different views. And that's what makes it so great because they are different. So, yeah, I think just listening to a lot of different views and things. Yeah, it's hard sometimes because there's a lot of great ideas, and then how do you implement it? And so sometimes you gotta just kind of stick to something and work on something. It's never going to be perfect. You're always going to be changing it. But yeah,
seems like you're molding this as you go on and saying, okay, we need to bring in more resources, but at some point you actually apply it and see if it works. Does it resonate with your specific client? I would definitely echo that. The Human Side of Money is a brilliant podcast, and so is Kitsis and Carl. But the amount of knowledge out there and the amount of resources can be scary for younger financial planners starting out, or even older financial planners just saying, there's so much, I need to get hold of technology, bringing in new clients, learning more, spending time with clients, compliance, all of this. How do you prioritize that? And what phase are you in now in terms of, joining client care? What's at the top of your priority list?
Sure, it's a good question. I think there's been a lot. I think, coming into client care, a lot of my priorities has been around sort of like a lot of this, I would say, awareness. So more like the social media, a lot of the social media side, making a few little videos, explainer videos, those little doodly animations, those kind of things, and just trying to, I guess a bit of marketing and that side. I think a lot of my expertise have been pushed that direction because we're in a bit of a growth phase. So we've got the process that's been developed, and so now we need to get people to go through that process, and still trying to tinker with the process as we go along and changing things. And so, I think that's also, again, the great thing about being in a team is that everyone can have different expertise and bringing different things. So I don't have to focus on the compliance. I don't have to focus on, certain things. And I got to just focus on my little area, and also seeing clients and working with my clients. And then, I think team is amazing.
It could be very different from, working as a solo financial planner, seeing your clients, doing the administration, and then all of a sudden, being shifted into a team. Is what you're getting now what you expected it to be in terms of working as a team?
Yeah, I think it's kind of maybe gone past my expectations, because it's just so, I don't know. I've had a great experience. It's just been, like you said, it has been difficult. I think it also depends the reasons why you're going into it. If you were kind of going to a team because you think, it's just going to be easier, and that's it. I think it also becomes harder because you want to pick up your end. You want to make sure your end is standing strong. If you're going into it for money reasons or this and that, you're like, but I want to be seeing more clients. I want to try to do this and that. It's going to be very difficult to be in a team because there's going to be other responsibilities that are on you, if that makes sense. But if you're caring about the client, what's the right thing for the client? And I'm just thinking, how can I help to make the client experience the most amazing that anyone has, through client care? How can I change that they have a great client experience? How can I help more people to experience this great experience? How do I work on my marketing and those kind of things? It's a very different mind shift to, where I'm going to run around to find another client.
And sometimes comes, it comes from the things that you put in. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, when you're doing great work, the referrals come, and that's where I'd say 95% of the business comes from is referrals. And I think that's just testament to the work that we're doing. But you always just want to try and meet more people and help more people.
Ben, what do you see as the future of financial planning? What does this thing that we're doing now look like 10 or 20 years from now? How is it different from what we're doing now?
I think it's going to be nothing at all to do with products, to be honest. And I think it's all just going to be conversations almost like this and just chatting about life and money. Because you can see investing, robo advice and passive and all these things, the costs are just coming down and down and down. It's easy for someone to go online and to do an investment at a fraction of the price of doing it through an advisor. I think the real value comes though in that conversation about what is that investment for? What are we aiming towards? What is this money going to do for you? Or what do you want this money to do for you? What does your life look like? I've had just like I was working with a client now, and they had I'd say like a strict kind of upbringing. They've learned to save money. They've worked hard. And so he's always kind of just save, and just put everything together. And I said to him, things are on track. You need to like live a little, maybe take your family on holiday. And he was like, really? And he comes back, he's like, Ben, it's the first time I've taken a holiday for, I don't know how many years, and I felt free enough to do it. That's what real, financial planning is about. Discussing husband and wife together, saying, we just got married, or even before they got married, say, like, hey, we're going to get married. This is what should we be doing? What are our plans going to be? How are we going to do money together? Those are life-changing conversations that you're having with families. Got another client now who said, hey, things are going well. I've got a guy I've been seeing, he's kind of serious. Can we bring him into our financial planning meetings? I want to see how does this, line up. And she's almost like thinking like, hey, is this going to be husband material? Let me see how he comes out of these meetings in a way, like
my financial advisor has to approve my fiance kind of.
But it's like, if she's on this track and she knows where she's going, this is what her life wants to look like. Can he buy into that? Or does he want to, to spend everything, or doesn't care about, her dreams and the things, these are important things to know before you get married. But again, what great conversations that you're having with clients. And I think that's what the future of financial planning is. It's not about the investment per se. It's around about life and how money affects your life and what's happening to you and your family.
Ben, how would you prepare for a meeting like that? Clients saying, I want you to meet my potential fiance, to vet him, but also to make sure that we're on the same track. Do you prepare for that? And if so, like, what does it look like?
Yeah, well, it's something I got to think about because it's the first time. Well, actually, I lie because someone else brought in their husband as well. So it's becoming more common, I think. And it is interesting because there's so much that you got to understand as well why they're bringing them in. What do they want to see? So I think you got to get to know that first. Maybe what is I think also sometimes it's, like you said, it's so difficult to talk about money. But sometimes having that that third person, they can't shout at each other when someone else is there. They're like, oh, okay. And so, for example, like with the couple that I had before, he actually opened up and said in the meeting, he's like, Ben, how can I provide for my family? She wants me to provide. She said she wants me to be the provider, but how can I do that when I'm earning less than her? And then I looked at her and I said, okay, well, what does it mean to you to be a provider? And he said, well, I want him to lead the family. I want him to make decisions. I want him to do this, X, Y, Z. And I said, is that it? And she's like, yes. I said, okay, sure. Yeah. And I looked back at him and I said, was there anywhere there where she mentioned how much you need to earn? And she's like, no, actually not. So I said, so being provider to her is not about how much you earn. These are what she means to provider. You've interpreted it as this is what it is to be a provider. And for him, it was just a light bulb moment. That that's changed their whole outlook on money and how they're making decisions and talking about it. So that I couldn't really prepare for, but I had to understand what it was that was the root issue. Again, I think it's peeling back that onion.
Sure, Ben, that sounds so therapeutic. I can only imagine what that meant for them.
Yeah, it was like a light bulb moment, just something like a poof. It's like, wow. And think about it, with most relationships, money is the biggest problem in any relationship. So if you're able to now talk about your money, talk about how your money is being utilized or spent, what the goals are, where are you working towards as a family, when you're on the same page, I mean, how magical is that?
That makes our future planning so much easier.
Yeah. And I'm sure he still gets upset every now and again if she goes and buys some extra, does something to her hair or this and that. But they're working on it, and now he can say, "Oh, is that going to affect our trip to Zanzibar?" Or, "Oh, look at this." And so now they're thinking about their plan together as a couple, as opposed to just one person saying, "Yeah, I'm going to do this." So you can joke about it, sort of tongue in cheek as well in the relationship.
Given all of this, I'm curious, what does your review meetings look like?
That's why I say financial planning is just such an interesting thing, because I know technically, you're meant to be having it like once a year kind of thing. But when you've got these relationships with your clients, you're almost having a review meeting, all the time, because you're just checking in, or when things happen, that's the first phone call that I get, People are moving jobs. Hey, Ben, I'm moving jobs. I've had clients phone me. Hey, Ben, I've started now as a permanent member. They've asked me, do I get my 13th check paid out monthly, or should I have it as in lump sum at the end of the, in my birthday month? Should I be taxed on it monthly or as a lump sum at the end of the? I'm just like, well, what do you want? I don't know. Like, let's look at it and sit down. But the amazing thing is that they have become their first call. When something happens in their life. And so it's not a surprise. In a review meeting, I'm not like, oh, did you moved? I'm not caught off guard in a way, because we've had a conversation throughout the year. And I think that's, it's hard to do it from a compliance perspective. I think if you just keep copy of maybe the WhatsApps and the voice notes and things, but like that's technically reviews really, throughout the year, just checking in, meeting with them. They're discussing different things. And that I just still think it's important, at least though, once a year to sit down and just really look at maybe the numbers and seeing the direction that you're going. So I do think it's important to have a proper meeting. But I mean, a lot of you're having like mini reviews on the journey, if that makes sense.
Tailored more to what's appropriate for that client at that point, instead of just saying, "Oh, this is what your fund has performed, and therefore you're on track."
Yeah, and I don't think I ever do that. I've never looked at fund performance. I just say that's what it's done, because there's nothing we can do about it. Right? All they can do is either put more in or spend less. So, I just say your education fund is on track or it's not on track. So we need to, we can't talk about performance. I can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about it. It just happens. So they know they're in the right fund. We've placed them in the right fund for what they're trying to achieve. So we've got to ride it out, right? So there's no point even talking about fund performance.
Brilliant. I love how you position that and say, okay, this is where I add value. This is what you can control. Ben, this has been a wonderful conversation. I mean, I can't believe how this time just flew by. If people want to reach out to you and maybe want to have a conversation, potential doctors or just someone in the industry, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Either on LinkedIn. You can get hold of me on LinkedIn. You can get hold of me through the client care website, Instagram. I'm kind of everywhere. So wherever you send me a message, I'll get back to you.
Thank you so much for being here today and sharing the way you show up for clients. It's been so refreshing, and all the best with these life-changing conversations.
Thanks, Louis. It's a pleasure being here.